Hello everyone and welcome to Catholic Girl on the Radio, the show that takes you to the early church fathers' readings and writings on the gospel and on the commentary of the gospel and brings it to today's modern day languages. I'm Rita Saikali, your host, and today we're going through Luke chapter 17 verses 26 through 37. And the gospel tells us, "And as it was in the days of Noah, it will also be in the days of the Son of Man. They ate, they drank, they married wives. They were given in marriage until the day Noah entered the ark, and the flood came and destroyed them. Likewise, it was also in the days of Lot. They ate, they drank, they bought, they sold, they planted, they built. But on the day that Lot went out of Sodom, it rained fire and brimstone from heaven and destroyed them. Even so will it be on the day when the Son of Man is revealed. In that day, he who is on the housetop and his goods are in the house, let him not come down to take them away. And likewise, the one who is in the field, let him not turn back. Remember Lot's wife. Whoever seeks to save his life will lose it, and whoever loses his life will preserve it. I tell you, in that night there will be 2 men in one bed, and one will be taken and the other will be left. 2 women will be grinding together, the one will be taken and the other left. 2 men will be in the field, the one will be taken and the other left. And they answered and said to him, Where, Lord? So he said to them, Wherever the body is, there the eagles will gather together." The gospel of the Lord. Praise be to you, Lord Jesus Christ. We're actually going to go through a few of the verses today, but we're going to start with verse 31. We've gone through the other ones in the previous episode, so if you'd like, you can go ahead and listen to that as well. But we're going to go through verse 31 first. And throughout this episode, by the way, there's a few verses that we're going to look at through different points of view, which is kind of exciting. So we're beginning with 31, and this is commentary from Saint Augustine of Hippo, or Augustine. And he says, "When a time of trouble or testing comes, those who have embraced a more spiritual, faith-centered life should not return to old habit or worldly desires." That's us, by the way. That's you and me, because we have the tendency to go back to the earlier habits that we have. The person on the housetop represents someone who has risen above worldly concerns, living a life focused on higher spiritual truth. The goods in the house symbolize the worldly senses and distraction that can pull someone away from their spiritual growth. Also so true. There are so many things around us that distract us. How many times, I know I do this, do you say you're going to go and pray and instead grab your phone so that you can say your prayers or read your prayers off of your phone, and instead of actually reading your prayers, you end up on social media, scrolling through social media. I don't know. So those are like the goods in the house, where we're so easily distracted, where something else comes in to play. Sometimes it's this idea, or, I have to check this email. And it seems so urgent that it takes us away from the prayer that we actually have to do, or that we actually should be doing. And so these are the goods in the house that St. Augustine is referring to. And he goes on to say that such a person should not go back to indulge in these distractions, even when difficulties arise. You guys know this. If you have a habit of stress eating, you go back to stress eating as soon as stress happens. If you have a different habit during stress, we do this all the time. And he's warning us here, and he's saying we shouldn't go back even when difficulties arise, even when we know that path so well that we could take it. He continues on and he says, "Similarly, someone in the field refers to those who actively working in the church or serving others, like Paul and the apostles did. They should not be tempted to look back at the worldly comforts and ambitions they gave up when committing their mission. or they are committed to their missions, sorry. And he says, the story of Lot's wife is a warning for anyone who, in challenging times, looks back longingly at what they left behind instead of trusting God's promises. You guys, trusting God's promises is so important. Even when you are going through a storm, even when there's stuff that is happening around you, trust that He's going to take care of you. And He has promises for you. And they are absolutely for your benefit and for your love. I think if we start looking at God as a loving God rather than whatever images that we have of Him in our minds, and really ask Him for Him to reveal His love for us, or for Him to allow us to understand His character of love that He has, that's when we begin to see things differently. And that's where we begin to trust in God's promises. Because truthfully, what happens is that when you trust someone, when you know someone, and you love someone, that's when you truly begin to trust them. When you truly know that the other person has your best interest at heart, they have this love for you that is so great that they will never hurt you. That's when you begin to trust them. And as you let go of all of these things that you are attached to, or that I am attached to, our trust for Him begins to grow even more. And so St. Augustine goes on and he says, her transformation into a pillar of salt serves as a lesson. We must season our hearts with faith and stay connected or stay focused on God's path, avoiding corruption from worldly attachments. I don't know about you, but I used to think that worldly attachment just meant the physical things, but there's also a spiritual aspect into this, or an emotional aspect. I think the things that we're attached to it could be anger, or it could be resentment, and it could be hatred towards someone, or things that we may think like, oh, well, I'm a good Christian, or I'm practicing the faith and I've forgiven. But there are wounds within our souls that need to be cleansed, and we need to be detached from the wound itself and not just the situation that caused that wound. So you may have forgiven someone and you may have transformed your life, but a part of you still, if this was a physical wound, and if it was touched, it would hurt you. And if that's the case, then that means that wound needs to be looked at by Christ, and it needs to be revealed to God, and it needs to be brought to the surface so that He could heal it. And that's something that is so incredibly important for us to do. Moving on to the next verse that we have, which is verse 34 is what I want to say. Let's find out for sure, but it's a verse 34, and this is through St. Ambrose of Milan, and he has quite a few things to say about it. And so this verse, just for kind of reminder, says, I tell you, in that night there will be 2 men in one bed. The one will be taken and the other will be left. And so he says, or he explains, that the mention of the night is fitting because it symbolizes the time of the Antichrist, which is time of spiritual darkness. The Antichrist spreads confusion and deceit, claiming to be Christ and darkening the minds of people. In contrast, Christ, like lightning, shining brightly across the world, revealing His glory even when the darkness. Christ does not appear in hidden places or wandering in the desert. Instead, His presence fills the heaven and the earth, illuminating everything with His splendor. If I want to go back to this concept of healing that we were talking about a few minutes ago, I would say that it's kind of, God's light is so intensely beautiful that when you shine it on your wounds, you begin to see it for what it is. There are certain parts of our lives where we truly wish that they never come up and they remain in darkness and that no one sees them, not even our own self. There are certain things within our souls that we don't even want to face. We don't even want to remember. We don't want to think about it. We don't want to be a part of it in any way. But God's light, Christ's light, is so beautiful, and it really illuminates everything. He illuminates everything with his splendor. But the spiritual darkness that sometimes we choose to live in is what causes us to be distrustful of God. It's what causes us not to move forward and not to do great things, because every single one of us really is called for greatness. St. Ambrose continues, and he says, the two people in one bed represent humanity's shared condition of weakness and mortality. One is taken to meet Christ because of their faith and righteousness, while the other is left behind because of rejection and unbelief. And so the question is, who do you want to be? Despite your weakness, despite your mortality, despite all of it, who do you want to be? Do you want to be the one that is lifted up towards Christ? Then you have to make the right sacrifice. The right sacrifices in your day-to-day life. There is one of the things that Jesus tells St. Faustina in the diary of St. Faustina is, do not neglect interior mortifications. These are the little things that we make during our day, the little sacrifices that build us up. Not that they are the reason, but when we do make the right sacrifices for Christ, our entire lives are changed. And despite our weakness and mortality, we are taken to meet Christ because of our faith and righteousness. Saint Ambrose goes on to say that the two grinding at the mill symbolize people engaged in daily struggles of life. Hey, that's you and me. Some endure hardships with virtue and honesty, producing good fruits for God, and they are taken. Others give in to wickedness or fail to separate the good from the bad in their lives, and they are left behind. What a powerful statement. You and I are struggling regardless of where we are. We could either choose the right or choose the wrong. And some endure hardships with virtue and honesty. That virtue and that honesty, they are gifts from God, but that we ask for. That we present ourselves to God for him to cleanse us from the things that stop us from being virtuous. And it is a daily struggle. At times it's a daily struggle, but it produces good fruits. Whereas it's also extremely easy to lie, to give in to wickedness. Sometimes it's so much easier to lie to the person in front of you than to actually say the truth, because the truth will hurt, because it will not do anything good, because it will get you in trouble, because so many things. So it's easier to lie. And that's where you have to make your choice. Do you want to endure hardships with virtue and honesty and produce the good fruits to be taken up to God? Or do you want to live in wickedness? And so he continues. He says, the mill can also symbolize the world itself, where the soul is trapped in bodily prison. Some people, like the synagogue or a soul burdened by sin, fail to separate the outer shell from inner essence, producing unsatisfactory result. I'm going to do this one more time. Some people, like the synagogue or a soul burdened by sin, fail to separate the outer shell from the inner essence, producing unsatisfactory result. Did you hear that? A soul burdened by sin. Sin is truly a burden. It burdens us very greatly. It crushes our soul on so many different levels, and we don't even realize it. That's the bad thing. It decays our soul, and we don't even realize it. We don't realize that every action that we take has a repercussion. It's the law of physics, right? Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. But every action of ours has somewhat of a reaction. And when that action is sin, and when it's not repented of, when there's no reparation that are being made, whether through prayers and fasting or through actual reparation that is made to the person, when that's the case, sin burdens us. And we can't separate the outer shell from the inner essence. We just can't. We start either looking at ourselves through that lens and believing that this is our character, or we suppress it and it festers somewhere else. And that's the truth of sin. And so Ambrose continues. He says, these souls are left behind. In contrast, the church, the Holy Church and righteous soul refines their inner lives, presenting a pure offering to God, like good flour grounded from the ripened wheat. Your job and mine is to refine our inner selves, our inner lives on a daily basis. Are we growing in Christ every single day, or are we not? That's the real question that is there. What is happening in this case and in this scenario? Are you working on your inner life? Are you changing? Are you transforming? And Ambrose continues, and he says, the two in the field represents two parts of human mind. The outer mind, which is distracted by worldly things and wastes away, and the inner mind, which is renewed by God's grace. The inner mind bears good fruits through its diligence and is taken, while the outer mind, lost in idleness, is left behind. Ambrose also suggests that the two in the field could represent two nations, one faithful and taken by God, and the other unfaithful and left behind. God, in his justice, rewards people based on their deeds, not merely their outward similarities or associations. We know now more than ever than that we sometimes go to church and not everyone at church is a great person. Not everyone at church is a saint. Clearly everyone is a sinner, but those who are striving for a virtuous life are present, and those who are not striving for a virtuous life are also present at church. And while there are similarities and associations, maybe you're from the same place, town, country, maybe you look similar, maybe you have similar daily routines, but it's not about the similarities, it's about the heart. And it's about the actions that you take as a result of God's transformation of your heart. Because out of the mind comes malice and bad things, right? That's what Jesus tells us. But also out of the heart comes goodness if you've been cleansed with God. And if you decide to give your life to God and say, I'm going to lose my life for your sake, or here I am to lose my life, my Lord, do with it as you please. And so he continues and he says, the righteous are likened to eagles which soar above worldly concerns, live long and remain pure. The body they gather around is Christ himself, symbolizing the Eucharist. My flesh is true food. The church, as Christ's body, is the community of believers who are renewed through baptism in the Holy Spirit. This church gathers, like eagles, around Christ, preparing to meet him when he comes in glory for all to see. That's what we're here for. Every single day is a day of preparation. Every single day that I live is one day closer to seeing Christ. Assuming that I take that preparation and I ask him wholeheartedly, scrape at my soul, fix it, change it, make it look like yours. So now we're going to continue on with Luke 17:34, which kind of St. Ambrose went through all of it anyways, not just that verse, but this is from Saints Cyril of Alexandria, and he says that the two people that are in one bed represent those who live in comfort and abundance, and the bed itself symbolizes rest and ease. However, not all wealthy or comfortable people are wicked. Very true, you guys. Poverty does not mean, again, lack of money. It just is It's a detachment from the world. So among them, some live righteous and faithful lives and will be taken to be with Christ, while others who are selfish or sinful will be left behind for judgment. This is true of all of us. Truthfully, examine your soul today. Who are you? And how could you be better? Because every single one of us can be better. We're called to become the best version of ourselves. And whatever it is today, it can be better tomorrow by the grace of God if I learn to love him and if I let him and allow him to truly heal my soul. And so he continues on to say, Saint Cyril continues to say, when Jesus says 2 women will be grinding at the mill, one will be taken and the other left, he is referring to people who live in poverty and labor. Even within this group, there is a significant difference. Some enter poverty with courage, maintaining their virtuous and honorable lives. These individuals will be taken. Others, however, live wicked lives, plotting dishonorable deeds, and they will be left behind. Good people are everywhere, bad people are everywhere. They're in every race. There's goodness. In every race, there is wickedness. And it doesn't really matter at that point, because in every class, right, what matters is not who you are, or what class you belong to, or how much money you make. What matters really is how you're choosing to live your life given the circumstances that you have. And are you loving more? And if you are more on the wealthy side, are you giving more to the poor? Are you helping out? Are you committing to prosperity of the church? Are you committing to the prosperity of the world around you? Are you considering things that can actually make an influence? And if you're not in that wealthier class, are you committing maybe a portion of your time? And if not time, then prayer. Are you remembering other people in your prayers? People who are struggling the same way you are, except they may not have that relationship that you have with God. Are they in your prayers? So Cyril goes on and he further explains that when Jesus comes to judge, he will send his angels to separate the righteous from the unrighteous. The unrighteous, whether rich or poor, will be taken to meet God, or will be taken up to meet Christ. As Paul says, will be caught up together in the cloud to meet the Lord in the air. And the righteous will remain to face judgment. When the disciple asked, "Where, Lord?" in response to Jesus saying some will be taken, he replied with a metaphor. As the vulture gather around a dead body, so will the saints, the eagles, right, gather to meet the Son of Man when he comes. And this means that the faithful will eagerly come to Christ at his return. That eagerness to be with Christ can start today. It could start at the Eucharist. Eagerly go to Mass. Go celebrate Divine Liturgy. Go talk to Christ. Long for him. Be eager to meet him at every moment of your life, not just 1 hour a week. But be eager to be with him, really long to be with him, because he's incredible. And he will change your life. Now we're going to continue on with verse 37. And this is commentary from St. Ambrose of Milan. And he says, Ambrose of Milan explains this response by first interpreting eagles. The eagles represents the souls of the righteous who are compared to these birds because they soar to great heights. Hopefully that's you and me again, leaving the low and earthly behind, and believed to live a long lives. That's who the eagles are, and hopefully that's who we are as well. David also speaks of souls being renewed like an eagle's youth. If the eagles are righteous, then the body must also be understood. Ambrose suggests that the body is Christ himself, particularly his physical body, which Joseph of Arimathea took from Pilate after the crucifixion. The eagles gather around that body can be seen as Mary Magdalene, Mary of Cleopas, Mary the mother of Jesus, and the apostles gathered at the tomb. This is a great and beautiful imagery that we have. Some of these early church fathers stuff is just, it's so profound. Anyways, it's a beautiful image. And so he further explains that he connects Jesus' statement, "My flesh is the true food, and my blood is the true drink," suggesting that the eagles also represents those who are spiritually fed on Christ through faith in his incarnation and his sacrifice. And the Eucharist, right? So the body also symbolizes the church, where the believers are spiritually renewed through baptism and restored to a new life, leaving behind the wickedness of sin and the old self. I love that our parents, or the majority of our parents, they baptized us when we were kids, and we get to leave the old behind and start fresh and start new. However, it's kind of like giving us the first chance, but it's kind of giving us the first chance from the early childhood to go forth in faith and to go forth and really live out our Christian calling without having to deal with that old self as much. But there is a renewedness that has to happen on a daily basis, I feel. I don't even know if I'm expressing my words correctly, but point is that we are so blessed to be baptized, the majority of us, from our infancy, because it gives us like a head start into this kingdom of heaven, which is really great. So then he goes on to say, wherever Christ's presence is found, through faith, the sacrament, and the church, the righteous will gather like eagles drawn to him. God is so good, you guys. Go to church. God is so good. Go to church. That's the essence of it. Go gather around him. Gather around his body so that you can fly like the eagles and you can really be spiritually fed. All right, my friends, that is it for today. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you want to connect with me, you can find me on social media at The Word with Rita, and I will be with you guys in the next episode. Bye for now.